Hi, my name is Newell Davis with World Composting, and today we're going to go over how to bury a bucket in your yard so that way you can use it to add compost to. And the first part of this is, of course, having a bucket here. So I'm doing a voiceover for this, which is a little bit different. Normally I talk live, but the first part of this is I need to get a bucket ready. And this is an old bucket that I had, which I buried in the ground for dog waste. Unfortunately, that never really panned out very well. And I'm repurposing it for this, luckily, because I do like to repurpose things that I have. So I'm cutting off the bottom. I had some holes that were drilled in it. I want it to be open so the food just falls right through the bucket, but the bucket sort of acts as a top. Now, because I'm doing this when this is plastic and I was using that reciprocating saw, I did decide that I should also do this outside and then make sure that I clean up the mess, which is why you're going to see me here vacuum everything just a little bit. The plastic pieces, I don't want them going into the yard. I don't want them going all over the place. And I just sort of vacuum those up at the end. Now, with this, now that I have the bottom cut out, I really want to take this over and start digging a hole and make sure that the bucket will fit in it. So this footage that you're about to see is sped up at 400 times, but this is the area that I put it in. I have this drill bit that I use on my drill that's meant for digging out soil. It actually works surprisingly well in this type of soil, but we need to start digging out a fairly large hole for that bucket. Now, typically this is really hard to do in my yard. Luckily, we did just have some rain. I have a lot of clay. The yard is, I should say, they stripped off all the topsoil. It's 100% clay almost with rocks added in to make it, just more hard. So that's where you see I've got the drill to do the top layer just to loosen it up, and that does work really well. Now I'm using the shovel to kind of dig in there. And then laying down in the grass here, and now I just picked it up, is this digging bar. This is a 35-pound metal bar that's meant for digging out some of these large rocks that you're seeing me pulling out. And it's really helpful for getting these rocks that are stuck in the soil. You can kind of pound on them and get them out, and I found it to work really well. And as you can see, this is, remember, this is sped up quite a bit, and this took me a while to dig out. This is not easy soil to dig in. It's very hard. You constantly have to cram this bar into the ground to really loosen up the soil. Here's a close-up view of what I'm doing. I thought maybe that distance view was a little bit far away to see into the hole, but you can just see that there's just a lot of dirt that I'm loosening, but there's a lot of rocks in there as well, and they're also breaking apart. I think they buried some stone here in the ground. Not quite deep enough this time, so we still got to go further. And overall, this was a challenging process, but, I think it'll be worth it in the end to get these worms down in the soil. We're getting into the winter months here. It is October, but I'm hoping that with it being this far underground that the worms will be able to survive during the winter. If not, I will still plan to add food to it, but we're going to just test this out. I've never done something like this before. I tried it with Bokashi and dog waste. It wasn't worms itself, so this is going to be actual worms. I'm going to put my red wigglers in here. And we're going to try this outside and see how well, if they can survive over the winter. I think the summer would be harder with the heat, especially with that black bucket, but I'm hoping with the winter that it'll hold in that heat enough to keep them alive. Now you can really see here how hard it is to dig in this soil. I'm pulling away. Those are chunks of clay. That is not rock that I'm digging up. And it's really hard to dig here. And this is something I'm used to. I've been living in Maryland a long time, and this is what all the builders do. They strip off the topsoil and then build homes, and that way they can double their money by selling that topsoil off to the highest bidders. So you really don't have much soil here. As you can tell, it's a very reddish color, reddish brown. And this is what I've been trying to do for years with my worm bins, is replenish the nutrients in this soil. And it is starting to work for the top maybe inch, but it really doesn't get down into the soil. I probably should be doing this more frequently where I dig these holes. One other thing I did want to mention. Before I did this, I have already had my yard marked off before by Miss Utility or the utility company, whatever you have near you, to make sure that I am not hitting any wires. You need to be really careful with this. You do not want to hit wires while you're doing this, because especially with a drill or something, you can really kill yourself if you hit a high enough voltage wire, but you also can knock out the power or cable to your entire community. So you really want to be careful when you're doing this, which I did before I started digging. But you know, as you can see, another rock right there. But it's just you want to make sure that that's marked and you know that you're safe where you're digging. I already knew that going into this. As I said, I had this done before. So, and for the dirt that I'm just tossing to the side right here, I actually have a little slope till that is eroding away, so it's a perfect place to actually add some of that material anyhow. And hopefully it'll stay there, but we'll see. So it looks like we're good now, and let's go into a closer look. All right, so we have our hole here. I put this in, it's about this deep, or around 18 inches, I want to say deep. So it's not quite 2 feet like I was hoping, but it's getting there. And I think I'm just going to leave it like this. There's a lot of rocks at the bottom. They're kind of hard to get out. But what I want to do here is, if you can't tell, this soil, actually while I'm grabbing, let me put on a glove here. I probably mentioned this before, but if you can see, this soil near the top doesn't look too bad actually. So it looks pretty good. It's kind of clayish, but it at least has a little bit of body to it. Probably pretty decent. Throw that up back. But as you get further down, it just becomes more and more clay and more rock. And a lot of the rocks are not rocks, I think, that are native to this area. They are, it's been added to the soil by the builder when they built and just dumped it in the ground. So what we're going to do here, though, is we're going to add a little bit of drainage in here by adding some sand, some clay sand in here. So this is just his clay sand. And this is going to be kind of a grit material as well. We're going to add some of that to the bottom. Got a little tiny trowel here, so I can just kind of move that around a little bit. And just a little bit, just so there's a little bit of drainage in there. We're then going to add some of the cardboard, just because I am trying to build up some of the carbon back in the soil here. And it's just good for the soil in general. So just a little bit of that. Now, what we are going to be adding here is we're going to be putting this bucket in, like this. And I like leaving the handle in here because it sort of acts as a catch. And I will have to backfill this in. I'm going to have to grab some dirt and fill this side of this in. But the idea is that I really want to do here is be able to open this up and then put fruit and veggies in here. But we're getting close to the bottom here, but we're not quite there. And there's a couple more things that we need to add here. First off, I do have fruit that we're going to be adding. These are not frozen. These are actually just from my fridge. These are cantaloupes that I grew in my yard that went bad. But the big thing here is we need some worms, right? So we're going to grab what's in here, which is a whole lot of worms, I'm sure, and other microbes and everything. We're going to put that in the bottom here. And these are red wigglers. These are my standard worms, and I'm just going to add a whole bunch of this in here, because this is what we're going to use to inoculate this and get this working here. Now, I am doing this a little late in the season. You know, it's going to get cold soon. Tons of worms in here, tons of little critters. You can just see every scoopful. I'm just adding more and more of this microbial material to the mix. And just so you guys can see, hopefully that's focusing, but there's tons of worms in there just like that. They don't like the sun too much though. And this bin was sort of ready to harvest, but I really want to get this good rich material in there. Just like that. We add a little bit more here from this bin. And that should be enough worms to really get this moving. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this back up. This is probably ready to go through my sorting machine and be harvested. It's quite a bit stuck on here, but that's all right. We just clean that off right here. I'm not too worried about the worms. They can either survive in the soil there, or they'll become bird food, but either way, it's fine for me, I feel. So now we're going to put in a couple of these. Now, I did put in the worms first. We're just going to dump these in here. This is a ton of fruit for them, which is perfectly fine. And then we're going to put this bucket on top. So we're going to have to push this down now to get this to go. There we go. So now we're kind of smashing that stuff in. It's being held up by the fruit underneath. And now what we need to do is we need to backfill this. Now, I might have to use some time lapse on this part because I do have to grab some dirt. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to put a little bit more sand in there on the sides. This is also the worm's grit material too, by the way. And then we can actually put in some more cardboard this way too. Add some more air pockets in there. Doesn't matter if it's on the lid, I can just scrape this out. By the way, I probably mentioned it before, but this is reusing one of my old buckets that I had that originally for my dog in the front. I dug it up because it didn't work too well. Nobody seemed to want to use it. So, using it for this now.
As you can see, there's a lot of cardboard here. That's all right. I'm going to just kind of cram this in there. And now what we're going to do is we're actually, instead of doing what I was going to do, which is get dirt and put dirt around this, I think what we're going to do is we're just going to dig out the edge and put pressure on it. So I'm just going to kind of dig right here next to it and just kind of shift this over like this. Because this is going to get backfilled in anyhow. So I'm just going to do this and put pressure. And that way we can kind of get this really sorted in there. This will hopefully keep this nice and secure. These shovels that I'm doing on the backside, they will fill in. And I can always do that later with more dirt too. So there we go. One more. Now, the real purpose of this is to try to grow these trees that are right near this section here. Just gonna kind of chop that up a little bit there. I can always plant more grass. Now, as I was saying, the purpose of this is I've got these trees nearby. I'm hoping that this will add some nutrients to the soil and kind of help the worms come into this area. I'm gonna just put a little bit of pressure on here. Make sure that this is tapped down nicely. Looks like we have too much of a gap right there. I'm not trying to put a lot of pressure on this, and as there's more holes that open up, you can see there's a grub right there by my foot. There's a problem since I don't use chemicals. I do get some grubs in my yard. But you know, it's just to try to get some nutrients into the soil. I've been trying for years, and it's just taken a long time to build this up, I feel. So that's why I'm trying this method right here. And this is also allows me to kind of get rid of some extra things. Now, as far as water, the soil here isn't great at letting water through. So we'll have to check on it. I'm not too worried about it right now, as these cantaloupes that I'm adding have a ton of water. So, all right, I think that's good. Put my tool back to the side here. Now, what I want to do is I want to open this up and load this thing up. Gloves all wet from me doing this work here. This has been a back-breaking labor for me. I'm not used to doing this. So we're going to open this up here, dump this off to the side. As you can see our melons are in there. This feels pretty good. A little bit of an odor right now, but that's okay. And we're going to just dump the rest of these in. Oops. Actually in there and not on the side. And there's one other thing I'm going to do with this. And that is the fact, because I got this tool, by the way, this is a 35-pound digging bar. I'm just going to kind of go I don't care about the seeds in there this time. I just want them to kind of mush together and hopefully come out clean. All right, let me just tap all this down one more time. That looks pretty good. So I'm really hoping that this will help prepare my soil and just sort of get it going. I add a little bit more sand to the top. I'm hoping that also no animals try to dig this up. We'll also see how that goes. I have no guarantees on that, but we're going to load this up with some paper because we can. Just going to kind of help everything in there, I feel, to just make almost a worm bin that's underground. It has been dropping in temperature here lately, but hopefully it won't be too much of an issue. They already have the microbes they need in here. And actually, you know what we'll do? We're going to add a little bit of worms to the top of this as well, because it's going to rain the next, I think, week. We're supposed to get almost a week of rain after this, starting Monday, and today is Saturday. So we're just going to add more worms to the top of this here, more microbial material. And that way these guys can get moving on this. Because I really want this to work, so that way I can start just putting more and more stuff in here. One piece of, looks like it's not fully broken down. And this could be a full working system as well that's outside. And this would be sort of like a sub pod, if I had to guess. That thing. And this, you know, the lid, I think was only a few dollars. You know, the bucket itself, I think was $4. So you're talking 10 bucks worth of materials here to get a bin going outside, as long as you can dig in your yard. If you live in Florida or something where there's the water table's really high, you might not want to do this. You might have a lot of issues with water coming up. Anyway, get this on now. There we go. And when you're burying this, you want to make sure that the lid is on, because you want to make sure that the bin stays circular so you can keep closing it. So that's on now. Now there is one problem with these bins that I found, or these lids. These fill up with water, and that is a problem, because water here gets mosquitoes like a lot of areas, and then you have to make sure you just kind of empty this out. And I just take a blower and I just blow all the water out of here. But that's something you might want to think about if you're doing this. So that's how you do a underground worm system. We're going to try this out. We're going to see how well it works, and we're going to go from there. So I'll continue to update this probably. We'll see how it goes this winter. If it drops down in temperature, we'll have a really good idea if they can survive underground like this. And as we saw, it was almost 2 feet deep. I'm hoping that with the addition of food and everything kind of heats it up, but we'll see how it does. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below and let me know what you think of this system.